I stood in the middle of my childhood bedroom, my hands trembling as I folded the last of my things into a worn leather satchel. The eve of my wedding was supposed to be a night of joy, a quiet thrill before I pledged my life to Elias. Instead, it turned into a battlefield. My parents had other plans for me, and they weren't shy about letting me know. "You're throwing your life away," my father bellowed, his voice rattling the thin walls of our home. He loomed in the doorway, his broad shoulders filling the frame, his face red with fury. "Kings do not play with servants, Mara. That boy is beneath you, beneath us." I clutched the edge of my dress, the one I'd sewn myself for tomorrow, and met his glare. "Elias isn't a servant. He's a man who loves me. That's more than your rich suitor can claim." Mother stepped forward, her eyes glistening with tears she wouldn't let fall. "We've arranged everything, Mara. Lord Tavern's son, he's got land, a title. He'll lift us up. You can't turn your back on family for some penniless dreamer." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "Family? You mean your pride? Elias works hard. He's honest. Tavern's son could drown me in gold, and I'd still choose Elias." Father slammed his fist against the wall, the thud echoing like a judge's gavel. "Then you choose exile. If you walk out that door with him, you're no daughter of ours." The air went still. My sister Lila leaned against the far wall, arms crossed, a smirk tugging at her lips. She'd always loved watching me squirm. "Go on, Mara," she said, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Run off with your little pauper. See how long love lasts when you're starving." I didn't answer her. I didn't need to. My hands moved faster, shoving a spare shift in my grandmother's silver comb into the satchel. The comb was the only thing I'd take from this house, the only piece of them worth keeping. Mother grabbed my arm, her grip tight. "Mara, please. Think of us. Think of what we'll lose." I yanked free, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "You're the ones losing me." Father's face hardened. "Get out. And don't come crawling back when he fails you." I slung the satchel over my shoulder and walked past them, my boots loud against the wooden floor. Lila called after me, "Good riddance." But I didn't look back. The door creaked shut behind me, and the night swallowed me whole. I found Elias waiting at the edge of town, under the old oak where we'd first kissed. His dark hair was mussed, his hands stuffed in his pockets, but his eyes lit up when he saw me. "Mara," he said, stepping forward. "What happened?" "They gave me a choice," I said, my voice cracking for the first time. "You or them. I chose you." He pulled me into his arms, strong and warm, and for a moment, the weight of it all lifted. "I'll make you happy," he whispered. "I swear it." "I know," I said, and I meant it. We didn't have much. A friend's barn loft to sleep in, a handful of coins Elias had saved, but we had each other. The next morning we stood before a traveling priest in that same barn, surrounded by a few loyal souls who didn't care about lineage or wealth. My dress wasn't fancy, just plain cotton with stitches I'd done myself, but Elias looked at me like I was draped in silk. "I take you, Mara," he said, his voice firm, "for all my days." "I take you, Elias," I replied, my hand steady in his. The priest muttered his blessings, and that was it. We were bound not by gold or titles but by something stronger. Afterward, we sat on a hay bale, sharing a loaf of bread one of the witnesses had brought. Elias squeezed my hand. "They'll come around," he said, ever the optimist. I shook my head. "They won't. They'd rather die than admit they're wrong." He didn't argue. He knew me too well. Instead, he kissed my forehead and we laughed about the future. Our little dreams of a cottage, a garden, maybe a child someday. It wasn't much, but it was ours. That night, as I lay beside him in the loft, the straw poking through the blanket, I felt the sting of what I'd lost. My parents' voices echoed in my head. Kings do not play with servants, but I pushed them away. I'd made my stand. They could keep their pride, their schemes, their cold house. I had Elias, and that was enough. Or so I thought. Back then, I didn't know how deep their rejection cut, or how fate would twist our paths years later. I didn't know that the boy they called a servant would one day hold a fortune they couldn't dream of, or that they'd come begging at my door. All I knew was that I'd walked away from their world, and I wasn't looking back. But life has a way of turning choices into tests, and mine was only beginning. The years after I left home weren't easy, but they were ours. Elias and I carved out a life in a cramped cottage on the edge of town. A place with a leaky roof and walls so thin you could hear the wind whistle through them. I took in sewing, my fingers pricked raw by late nights stitching shirts for merchants' wives. Elias hauled crates at the docks or fixed carts for anyone with a coin to spare. We didn't have much. Some days, supper was just broth and a heel of bread. But we had each other, and that kept us going. I'd see Lila sometimes, strutting through the market in a new dress, her chin high like she owned the place. She'd catch my eye and smirk, tossing a barb my way. "Still playing house with your beggar, Mara?" she'd say, loud enough for others to hear. I'd bite my tongue and keep walking, my basket of mended clothes swinging at my side. She didn't know how Elias's laugh could warm a room, or how he'd hold me when the doubts crept in. She didn't need to. Her world was silken status, mine was threat and trust. Then came the day everything changed. It was a Tuesday late afternoon, and I was pinning a hem when Elias burst through the door, his face pale. "Mara," he said breathless, "there's a man here. A lawyer. He says I've inherited something." I set the needle down, frowning. "Inherited? From who?" He didn't get a chance to answer. A wiry man in a black coat stepped in behind him, clutching a leather case. "Elias Torrent?" he asked, peering at my husband like he was sizing up a horse. Elias nodded. The lawyer pulled out a stack of papers, his voice clipped. "Your father, Marcus Torrent, passed away last month. Merchant. Owned half the trade routes north of here. Left no other heirs. It's all yours, gold land, a house bigger than this town square." I stared at Elias, my mind racing. "Your father? You said he was dead or gone." "He was gone," Elias said, his jaw tight. "Left my mother when I was a baby. Never heard from him. I didn't even know his name till now." The lawyer slid the papers across our rickety table. "Sign here. It's legal. You're rich, boy." I grabbed Elias's arm before he could move. "Wait. How do we know this isn't a trick?" The lawyer raised an eyebrow, then handed me a letter sealed with red wax. I broke it open and read aloud. "To my son Elias, if you live, I was a coward. Take what I couldn't give you then." The handwriting was shaky, the ink smudged. It felt real. Too real. Elias signed, his hand trembling. Within a week, we left the cottage behind and stepped into a life I couldn't have imagined. The estate was a sprawl of stone and glass, with rooms we didn't know what to do with. Servants called us sir and madam, and I had to stop myself from laughing every time. The gold came in chests, more than we could count, and the land stretched beyond what we could see. Elias didn't let it change him, though. He hired men to fix the town's bridge, paid for a schoolhouse, and gave loans to families who'd once sneered at us. "We've got enough," he'd say when I asked why. "Might as well share it." The town noticed. People who'd ignored us started tipping their hats. Merchants offered discounts, hoping to curry favor. It was strange watching the world bend toward us after years of pushing against it. But not everyone was pleased. Word reached my parents, I knew it would. One morning a letter arrived, the paper crisp, the handwriting of my father. Marat read, "We hear you've come into means. Perhaps it's time we spoke."
No epalegi, no worms.
Just a probe, like they were testing the waters. I crumpled it and tossed it into the fire. "They don't get to claim us now," I told Elias, my voice hard. He nodded, but his eyes lingered on the flames, thoughtful. "They'll want something," he said quietly. "They always do." "Let them want," I snapped. They made their bed. We didn't talk about it again, but the letter stuck with me, a splinter I couldn't pull out. I'd see Lila in town less often now. Her dresses not so new, her smirk not so sharp. Rumors floated. My parents were spending more than they had, banking on Lila catching a rich husband. I didn't care enough to ask. My life was full. Elias and I planned a garden behind the estate, talked about a family of our own. The past felt like a shadow shrinking behind me, until it didn't. One evening, as Elias and I sat by the hearth, a servant knocked. "A message, madam," he said, handing me a scrap of paper. I unfolded it, my stomach twisting. "Mother's writing this time, short and desperate. We're struggling, Mara. Come see us. Please." I handed it to Elias without a word. He read it, then looked at me. "What do you want to do?" "Nothing," I said, my voice flat. They chose their side. I chose mine. He didn't push, just squeezed my hand. But as I stared into the fire, I felt it. The first crack in the wall I'd built. They were reaching out, and I hated how it stirred me. Not enough to run back, not yet. But enough to make me wonder what they'd say if I stood in their doorway again. The daughter they cast out, now holding more than they'd ever dreamed. That night, I lay awake beside Elias, his breathing steady while my mind churned. The windfall had changed everything, except them. And I knew deep down, this wasn't the end of it. Life in the estate settled into a rhythm I never thought I'd know. Elias and I woke to servants bustling, trays of food we hadn't cooked ourselves, and a town that now looked to us with something like awe. I'd catch my reflection in the polished glass of our new home. Still me, Mara, but draped in a life that felt borrowed. Elias stayed the same, though, always planning some new way to give back. "We're not here to hoard," he'd say, and I'd nod, proud of the man I'd chosen over everything else. But shadows from the past kept creeping in. That letter from Mother, "We're struggling, Mara. Come see us," sat heavy in my mind, though I'd burned it days ago. I didn't know them anything, not after they'd thrown me out like trash the night before my wedding. Still, the words gnawed at me, and I hated that they did. Then the rumors started. I'd hear them in the market, whispering between stalls as I picked out cloth or bread. Lila had gotten herself into trouble, big trouble. Some said she'd been caught slipping out of Lord Tavern's son's chambers, the same man my parents had tried to pawn me off to. Others claimed she'd forged a betrothal contract, thinking she could trap him into marriage. Whatever the truth, it blew up. Tavern's family sued, demanding repayment for damaged honor, and the town turned on Lila like wolves on a wounded deer. I saw her once, a week after the whispers began. I was leaving the baker's when she stepped out of an alley, her dress frayed at the hem, her hair loose and wild. No smirk this time. "Mara," she said, her voice low. "You've heard, haven't you?" I kept my face blank. "Heard what?" "Don't play dumb," she snapped, stepping closer. "The scandal. Tavern's lot, they're bleeding us dry. Father's selling the fields to pay them off." I shrugged, adjusting my basket. "Sounds like your mess, Lila. Clean it up." Her eyes flashed, but there was fear behind them. "You think you're above us now, don't you? With your gold and your big house. We're still blood." "Blood didn't stop you from laughing when they kicked me out," I said, turning away. "Figure it out yourself." She didn't follow, but her glare burned into my back as I walked off. I didn't feel sorry for her, not then. She'd always been their golden child, the one they'd pinned their hopes on after I'd failed them. Let her fall. The next blow came faster than I expected. Elias and I were at the town square one morning, handing out blankets to families hit hard by a bad harvest, when I saw Father. He was haggling with a trader, his voice sharp but strained. The man shook his head and walked away, leaving Father clutching a single coin. His coat was patched, his shoulders slumped. I froze, the blanket slipping from my hands. Elias followed my gaze. "That's him, isn't it?" I nodded, unable to speak. Father looked up, caught my eye, and for a moment, I thought he'd come over. But he turned and shuffled off, disappearing into the crowd. "He's selling everything," I said, my voice flat. "The house must be next." Elias put a hand on my shoulder. "Their pride will be their ruin, Mara. You said it yourself." "I know," I muttered, but seeing him like that, broken small, stirred something I didn't want to name. It wasn't long before the truth hit the town like a hammer. My parents sold their home, the big proud place they'd raised us in, to settle Tavern's demands. They moved into a rented shack near the docks, a far cry from the life they'd bragged about. Mother took in washing, her hands red and cracked from the work. Lila vanished for a while, then reappeared, thinner, quieter, trailing Father like a ghost. The townsfolk clucked their tongues, some with pity, some with glee. "Serves them right," I heard one woman say. "Thought they were untouchable." I kept my distance, but the news found me anyway. Elias and I were stronger than ever. Our garden was thriving, and people thanked us daily for the schoolhouse. Yet every whisper about my family felt like a pebble in my shoe. I'd won, hadn't I? They'd cast me out, and now I stood taller than they ever would. So why did it feel like the ground was shifting under me? The answer came one evening, as the sun dipped low. Elias and I were in the dining hall, finishing a quiet supper, when a knock rattled the door. A servant ushered in 3 figures, Father, mother, and Lila. They stood there ragged and hollow-eyed, like beggars at a feast. Mother stepped forward first, her voice trembling. Mara, we're in trouble. We've lost it all, the house, the land. We need your help. Father's jaw tightened, but he didn't contradict her. Lila stared at the floor, her hands twisting in her skirt. I stood, my chair scraping loud against the stone. You need my help? I said, each word slow and deliberate. After you threw me out? After you called Elias a servant and me a fool? Mother flinched. We were wrong, Mara. Please. We're family. Family. I laughed, sharp and cold. You stopped being my family the night you chose pride over me. Father finally spoke, his voice rough. We've got nothing left. You've got everything. Blood's thicker than gold. I crossed my arms, staring them down. Not thick enough to forget what you did. Get out. Lila's head snapped up, her eyes wet. You're cruel, Mara. You'd let us starve. I'd let you face what you built, I said. Go. They didn't move at first, but Elias stood beside me, silent but solid, and they shuffled out, mother sobbing, father muttering curses. The door shut and the silence pressed in. Elias touched my arm. Are you sure about this? Yes, I said, though my chest ached. They don't get to rewrite the past. But as I watched the fire flicker that night, their faces lingered, desperate, broken. I'd sent them away, and it felt right. So why did my hands shake? Why did I wonder what they'd do next? The echo of the door slamming behind my parents, and Lila hung in the air longer than I wanted it to. I stood there, fists clenched, staring at the spot where they'd been, their desperate faces burned into my mind. Elias stayed quiet beside me, his hand resting light on my shoulder. The dining hall felt too big, too empty, after they'd gone. You did what you had to, he said finally, his voice soft but sure. I nodded, but my throat tightened. Then why does it feel like I just kicked a dying dog? He didn't answer right away, just pulled me into his arms. I let him hold me, my cheek pressed against his chest, listening to the steady thump of his heart. They'll survive, he said. They always do. I wanted to believe him. I'd spent years building a wall against them. Every insult, every sneer, every time they'd chosen pride over me stacked like bricks. Sending them away was supposed to feel good, a clean cut. But as I pulled back and met Elias's eyes, I saw a flicker of something. Pity maybe, or a question he wouldn't ask. It made me turn away, busying myself with clearing the table. The next morning I threw myself into work. We'd started a project to widen the schoolhouse, and I spent hours with the carpenter, sketching plans, counting coins. Anything to keep my mind off them. But the town had other ideas. By noon the whispers reached me. Heard your folks came begging, the baker said, sliding me a loaf. Turned him out cold, did you? They turned me out first. I shot back, snatching the bread. He shrugged like it didn't matter either way. It didn't stop there. At the well, 2 women clucked their tongues as I passed. Shame letting family rot like that, one muttered. Money's made her hard, the other replied. I kept walking, my jaw tight, but their words stuck like burrs. Hard. Maybe. Cruel. No. They didn't know what it was like to be cast out on your wedding eve, to hear your own blood call your husband trash. Elias heard it too. That evening, as we sat by the hearth, he set his book down. People are talking, Mara. Let them, I said, poking at the fire. They don't know half of it. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. They see us up here then down there. It's a story they're writing without us. Then they're blind, I snapped. My parents chose this. Lila chose it. I'm not their savior. He held my gaze, steady as ever. I'm not saying you're wrong. Just maybe a little help wouldn't undo what you've built. Might even free you from it. I stared at him, the firelight dancing in his eyes. Free me? The idea stung. I didn't want to be free of my anger, it was mine earned. They don't deserve it, I said, my voice low. Not a coin, not a crumb. He nodded, letting it drop, but his words lingered. I went to bed that night with my resolve intact, or so I thought. Sleep didn't come easy. Mother's sobs, father's curses, Lila's glare kept me tossing until dawn. A week later they came back. I was in the garden, pulling weeds, when a servant ran up. They're here, madam. At the gate. I wiped my hands on my apron, my stomach twisting, and followed him. There they were, same as before but worse. Mother's face was gaunt, her shawl threadbare. Father leaned on a stick, his coat hanging loose. Lila stood behind them, arms crossed, her eyes red-rimmed. They looked like ghosts of the people who'd raised me. Mara, Mother started, her voice cracking. We've got nowhere else to go. The shack's gone, rent's unpaid. We're sleeping by the docks. Father cut in, gruff but brittle. You've got rooms here. Food. More than you need. We're not asking for much. I crossed my arms, my pulse hammering. You're asking for what you threw away. Remember that night? Get out, you said. You're no daughter of ours. Mother flinched, tears spilling. We were fools, Mara. We see it now. Please. Lila stepped forward, her voice sharp. You're punishing us for being human. You've got everything. Why hoard it? I laughed, cold and jagged. Punishing you? No, Lila. I'm living. You built this ruin. Father with his pride, Mother with her schemes, you with your greed. I begged you to see me, and you laughed. Now you're here because I've got gold, not because you're sorry. Father's face darkened. You're evil, girl. Letting your own blood starve. Evil? I stepped closer, my voice rising. You made me choose Elias or you. I chose him. You don't get to crawl back now that he's won. Mother sank to her knees, sobbing. Mara, I'm begging. Get up, I said sharp. And get out. This is my home. You're not welcome. Lila grabbed Mother's arm, pulling her up, her glare cutting through me. You'll regret this, she hissed. Father turned away, muttering, ungrateful wretch. They shuffled off, a broken trio against the dusk. I stood there until they were gone, my chest heaving. Elias appeared behind me, silent. It's done, I said, more to myself than him. He nodded, but his eyes searched for mine. Is it? I didn't answer. That night, the rumors exploded. Lila spread her venom. Told anyone who'd listen I was a heartless tyrant, a daughter who'd let her family die. Some believed her. Others defended me, citing Elias's kindness my own. The town split, and I felt the weight of every stare. I lay awake again, Elias breathing steady beside me. I'd won, hadn't I? They were gone, my line drawn. But the ache wouldn't leave. Anger mixed with something softer, something I refused to name. Elias's words echoed. Might even free you. Maybe he was right. Maybe I'd locked myself in with them. The next move wasn't mine to make, but I knew they'd try again. And when they did, I'd be ready, or so I told myself. The days after I sent my family away for the second time blurred into a strange quiet. The town buzzed with their version of me, half villain, half saint, but I kept my head down. Elias and I poured ourselves into the schoolhouse, the garden, anything to drown out the noise. I won, I told myself. They couldn't touch me anymore. But every night as I lay beside Elias, their faces crept in, Mother's tears, Father's curses, Lila's glare. I'd shove them away, but they'd linger, stubborn as stains. A month passed before the test came. It was late, the fire was low when a servant knocked. Someone at the gate, madam, he said, his voice tight. A child. I frowned, pulling a shawl around me as I followed him. Elias trailed behind, his hand brushing mine. At the gate stood a girl, no more than 6, her dress patched, her face smudged with dirt. She clutched a scrap of paper, her eyes wide. Are you Mara? She asked, her voice small. I am, I said, kneeling to her level. Who are you? She handed me the note. I unfolded it, my breath catching at Lila's scrawl. This is my daughter, Kes. I can't feed her. You've got plenty. Do what you want.
No plea, no guilt.
Just cold words, like she'd tossed the girl at me and walked away. I looked at Kes, her thin frame trembling in the night air. Where's your mother? I asked. Gone, she said, shrugging. Left me here. Elias crouched beside me, his voice gentle. What do we do, Mara? I didn't answer right away. My mind spun. Lila's last jab, dumping her mess on my doorstep. I could send the girl back, let them figure it out. They didn't deserve my help, not after everything. But Kes wasn't them. She was just a kid caught in their wreckage. Take her inside, I said, finally standing. Feed her. We'll sort it out tomorrow. Elias nodded, guiding Kes in, but his eyes lingered on me, questioning. I stayed at the gate, staring into the dark, my hands balled into fists. This wasn't forgiveness, it was survival. I wouldn't let Lila's failure break me too. The next morning, Kes sat at our table, wolfing down bread and broth. She didn't talk much, just watched us with wary eyes. Elias leaned close as I poured water. "She's not her mother," he said low. "You know that." "I know," I muttered. "But they'll see it as weakness if I keep her." "Or strength," he countered. "Your choice, not theirs." I didn't reply, but his words stuck. That afternoon I tracked Lila down. She was at the docks, haggling over a fish, her hair a tangle. She saw me coming and smirked, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Come to gloat?" she asked. "No," I said, stopping short. "Kes is with me. You don't get to dump her and walk away." She shrugged, turning back to the fish. "You've got the means." "I don't. She's better off." "She's your daughter," I snapped. "Not my burden." Lila faced me, her voice flat. "You won, Mara. You've got everything. Take her or don't, I can't." I stared at her, the sister who'd mocked me, now a shell of herself. No fight left, just resignation. I walked away without another word, my chest tight. She wasn't worth the argument. Back home, Elias sat with Kes, showing her a wooden toy he'd carved. She giggled, first time I'd heard her laugh. I watched them, and something shifted. Not forgiveness, not for Lila or my parents, but a crack in the wall I'd built. I didn't owe them anything, but I owed myself peace. "We'll keep her," I told Elias that night, my voice firm. "Not for them, for us. She stays, but they don't get a piece of me." He smiled, pulling me close. "That's my Mara. I didn't give my parents or Lila anything else. No gold, no rooms, no second chances. They scraped by, fading into the town's edges, a story no one cared to tell anymore. Kes grew with us, her quiet turning to chatter, her wariness to trust. She called me Aunt Mara. And I let her. It fits. Years later, the estate was alive with more than just wealth. Elias and I had a son, Torin, named for the father he'd never known. Kes became his shadow, bossing him around like a big sister. The town stopped whispering about my family's fall and started talking about what we'd built: schools, homes, a market that thrived. They'd nod when I passed, some with respect, some with grudging awe. One evening, as I tucked Torin in, he asked, "Why don't we see Grandpa and Grandma?" I paused, smoothing his hair. "They made choices, little ones. So did I. We're here because of mine." He nodded, sleepy, and I kissed his forehead. Downstairs, Elias waited by the hearth. Kes sprawled on a rug with a book. I joined him, resting my head on his shoulder. "Think they're still out there?" I asked, meaning my parents, Lila. "Does it matter?" he said, his arm around me. "No," I admitted. And it didn't. They'd lost everything: pride, power, me. I'd gained more than they'd ever dreamed, not just gold, but a life I'd forged with my own hands. The fire crackled and I closed my eyes, letting the past burn away. I'd face their tests, rejection, begging, even less, and come out stronger. They'd called me evil, cruel, but I wasn't. I was Mara, wife to Elias, mother to Torin, aunt to Kes. My crown wasn't wealth or lineage, it was the family I'd chosen, the one that chose me back. And that was enough. And that's the tale of how I claimed my own crown. What do you think? Did I make the right call, or should I have given my family a chance? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every one. If you loved this story, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next chapter of someone else's fight for fortune. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.